Yes, BR Boxing. We are back with something special here tonight. It's Riddia season, and we are previewing a big fight, breaking down a fight between Zhilei Zhang and Joe Parker. Big heavyweight clash, obviously, which gets everyone going. WBO interim world heavyweight title on the line for this one. Delighted to be joined by you, Niall and Greg. To be honest with you, to break this down, and unpick it further than what usually happens in a preview where we don't necessarily get the time to talk tactics and styles, etc., etc. So I'm really excited to be joined by you both. Thank you for joining me. What we're going to do, we're going to obviously talk about predictions at the end, but we're going to start off going straight in with a little look at Joe Parker, to be perfectly honest with you, because I think I was surprised last time out with the victory, the UD victory over Deontay Wilder. And before we look at this fight, what I'm going to ask you both actually is, do you see in that performance? Have you seen that performance? Do you look at that performance and think that's actually influenced your predictions and how you read this fight? Or are you sort of stepping outside of that previous performance and kind of has your opinion not really changed too much in the interim from that one? So Niall, I'll come to you first with that question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm really looking forward to this one. But would I say it's the Wilder performance has changed my opinion? Not necessarily. Like yourself, I was surprised to see Parker perform so well and actually beat Deontay Wilder. Obviously, not a major surprise, but it was quite a surprise, and he did perform well. But Zhilei Zhang brings plenty of different propositions than what Deontay Wilder brings. So stylistically, it didn't change too much. If Wilder had a knocked out Joseph Parker, my prediction would probably be the same. Styles make fights and all that, but yeah, it hasn't changed my kind of prediction, which I'll save to the end. But I will say that it's a very hard prediction to make for this one. I just cannot wait for this fight. I think for me, it's the real main event of the card. It's such an intriguing fight stylistically, I think. But yeah, different proposition to Wilder, but a very, very tricky one all the same.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying there, Niall, to be perfectly honest with you. And Greg, I'm going to come to you then to pick up a few threads that Niall's mentioned. Obviously, stylistically, this is different than Wild. Obviously, Southpaw, Wild Orthodox fighter, but both obviously carry power. But what I was going to say to you is, again, is do you think prediction wise or kind of style wise going into this fight, do you expect something different having experienced the Joseph Parker performance against Deontay Wilder, or are you kind of still reading it as you would taking that performance aside?
Yeah, I don't know about you, Elliott, but Niall got me really fucking up for it there, man. I'm all. I'm wishing it was tomorrow now. Um, I'm not a million miles away from Niall. I do agree with a lot of what you're saying. It's slightly changed for me because it goes to show me that Joseph Parker has the mentality to deal with a hard night where you maybe think I've had a couple of losses. I've got a guy in front of me that can take my head off, and you can keep that mentality all night to go and win a fight with a guy can just one shot, that's it. So in ways, I've had to look at Joseph Parker in a different way and see that he's still really got the stomach for a big night. So yeah, I would say it's slightly changed my point of view on the fight, but that's when you have to, again, we've spoke about that off video, you have to take that step back and you have to look at a fight and just break it down for what it is. So to answer your question, Elliot, very slightly, it's changed what I think about the fight.
Greg, I'm going to come to you because you're obviously the one that we like to talk to about sort of technique and style and reading of a fight. You've got a very good sort of intuitive understanding of how you think a fight will play out. And I'm going to ask at the top of this video, a lot of people expect essentially Zhang to sort of come in to try and stop Joe Parker. Obviously, very, very big
Yeah.
puncher. He's got, I think it was 21 KOs or something, 25 victories, something like that. So obviously, big puncher. Parker potentially with a better conditioning can obviously maybe go down the stretch. Maybe expect him to kind of try and box Zhang and maybe let him tire himself out a bit. Do you see the fight kind of playing out like that? Do you see it being as tactically obvious as that? Zhang looking to land on him early, or do you think that actually it's more nuanced than that?
No, thanks for your kind words, Elliot. Yeah, no, I think it is as plain cut as that. Zhang's got slow feet. Deontay Wilder had slow feet. Joseph Parker needs to make that work for him. He needs to get and land his shots and just be out of distance. I think Zhang is a bit more aggressive in the way that he'll come forward and look for you in terms of his feet. It's almost like he gets a bit of a rage at times. We've seen it with Joe Joyce. Parker needs to switch the angle, needs to change his direction, move, and I think he needs to pick up four, five, yeah, five of the six early rounds, and then he can afford to maybe slow down and just focus on Zhang, not landing anything extremely heavy on him. And I think we've got a good fight down the stretch.
No, do you agree with that? Do you think it is as clear cut as that, with Zhang obviously looking to maybe pressure Parker in a way that Wilder necessarily wasn't able to do, being obviously more decorated at the amateur level and maybe being a bit better technically? Do you expect that to happen? But do you also expect it to be as black and white essentially as Zhang looking for the stoppage and Parker looking for maybe a longer night?
I think Parker has to take this late. I think it's still the one big question on Zhang, which is the condition and the gas tank. You know, if somebody puts it on him down the stretch, we seen it against Jerry Forrest. It wasn't answered against Joe Joyce, you know, thanks to a couple of brilliant performances from Zhang. But Joe Joyce had the conditioning to potentially take a late, but obviously Zhang got him out of there. I think Parker needs to get inside range, work the body, take him late, avoid the big shots, and yeah, just really test that gas tank of Zhilei Zhang. And he has the chin to do it. He has the durability to do it. I know Joyce has a good chin and he cracked that, but I think Parker also has a really solid chin. And like you proved against Wilder, if you can get inside range, you know, the overhands work in the tree, but body work from Parker to kind of expose that issue if there is an issue there of a lack of condition. So I think Parker's best hope is going to be to take this late, maybe stop him, or maybe even drop him to win a points decision. So yeah, I can't see Parker winning it early. I do think it will be down the stretch or on the cards if he is going to win this one.
I suppose, like we said, the narrative really here is developing around. Obviously, look, Parker's obviously not. I mean, his record has 23 KOs and 34 wins. So you're sitting there going, he actually can punch a bit. But then you look, I suppose you unpick it a little bit more, and you say, well, he stopped Simon Keane, Apello, but he's not really fought. He's not really stopped anyone at the level I suppose you think Zhang probably currently is. So people would be looking at it, I think, going, well, maybe Parker points or maybe Zhang KO. But we're going to invert this now, Niall, and I'm going to come to you first here and with two questions. The first one is, do you reckon that Joe Parker has it in his locker to stop Zhang? And give me maybe a percentage. So maybe you think that's sort of a 20% likelihood, sort of 30% likelihood, just been get some comparative stats. And invertedly, do you think that Zhang could possibly outpoint Parker? You talk about tiring him out, but do you think there's a way that he could also win on points? So what are the possibilities of the two unlikely results taking place in your mind?
I do think Parker could definitely stop Shang, as mentioned, if he takes it late and exposes the questions around Zhang's kind of gas tank and his conditioning. If he works the body and kind of just he could stop him late, I think. So I think if I was to give a percentage, I'd say that's quite a high percent, 50 to 60% chance that he could stop him. Especially if he gets into the second half of the fight, you know, as I say, he's durable enough to do it. But on the other hand, I think Shang could definitely outbox Joseph Parker and outpoint Joseph Parker. You know, Zhang is a nightmare. Boxing, like ability wise, Greg mentioned there, his feet aren't the quickest, which is true. But apart from that, he's got fast hands, really solid fundamentals. You know, really good technical boxing skills. So he's the bigger man here too. Like he's a big unit of a man with those skills to match. So yeah, he's a real problem. But I could see him keeping Parker on the end of a jab all night if he can get Parker's respect with the power too, which will stop kind of Parker overcommitting. I could definitely see Zhilei Zhang outpoint Joseph Parker. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. But yeah, I think if Parker's best chance to stop Zhang, as I say, is second half of the fight. If he can wear down the conditioning of the big man for me.
Greg, do you agree with Niall there? Do you think there's a likelihood of both those things happening, that Parker could actually stop Zhang second half of the fight, and that Zhang may keep Parker on the jab and actually win what would be a decision victory?
I agree with him probably 90% of the time. And yeah, I do agree that I think both outcomes are very possible. But I don't know if I see Zhang being good enough to keep Parker, who is quite elusive on the end of a jab all night. But what I would say is that if Zhang hurts Parker early, Parker's going to really think about what he's doing when he's coming in. And that could just see him being outboxed for that reason alone, because he's over thoughtful about what's coming back at him. Joseph Parker stopping Zhilei Zhang, yeah, I can see that, but I don't see it based on power. I don't think Joseph Parker's got the power to stop Zhang. I think it would be, like Niall said, I think it would be based on if he's tired, if he doesn't necessarily have the engine, but target the body. Straight shots to the body. Don't stay in there too long throwing hooks round the side. That's how you get caught, the same way that Joe Joyce get caught. Throw straight right, straight down the pipe, down to here, solar plexus, and that takes everyone's tank away from them. Easier said than done, guys, but I think that's what he needs to do.
You know, Greg, I'm going to push you here because you can be pushed and you know your stuff. So I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you actually to come to you first and foremost here. I'm going to ask you basically essentially for how you think both fight. You've mentioned it there, you know, tactically. You've mentioned different punches. You've also mentioned possibly Parker picking up, you know, early rounds and then looking to sort of stay away from Zhang late on and win points as well. So what I want to ask you really is how you think both fighters should approach this fight. If you're, you know, you're calling them and you're giving them any advice, how you think Zhang should go about it. And that could be anything from, you know, shot selection to kind of distance range, however you sort of want to go about it. I'm going to give you a sort of minute and plus just to talk about how you think Zhang should approach it and also how you think Parker should approach it as well, please.
Yeah, thanks, Elliott. I think Parker needs to start fast. I think he needs to pick up the early rounds, especially that they're going to be so important for him. I can see ways in which people will say, "Oh, stay away from Zhang early. You're tired down the stretch. Don't take that chance. Land a jab, finish with a straight to the body. Get away from Zhang fighting bursts. If he does that and he picks up early rounds, no matter what Zhang does in the second half of the fight, Parker's going to know he's ahead, and he's going to have that ability and that grit to say, right, okay, I know this bit in the fight's getting hard for me, but I've got money in the bank, and I know that I just need to be very careful with what I do. And if I lose some rounds, that's fine because Zhang will slow down. It's inevitable. For Zhang to win the fight, I think he needs to adopt the Joe Joyce tactics. I think he needs to walk Parker down, keep a tight guard, and just realise that if you can take everything Parker throws at you, you're going to get him at some point. So for me, honestly, Elliot, this is, I always say to the guys, Niall, a lot of the time I find some of the fights hard to break down. I honestly think this is one of the most black and white fights that I've ever seen. I see two ways in which the guys win it, but it's who adopts the game plan the best will be the victor in this fight.
Niall, do you concur with Greg there? Then do you think essentially that Parker's approach of, you know, essentially starting fast, getting rounds in the bank, and then dragging Zhang obviously into the later rounds where he will slow down, and then maybe trying to sort of pick him off that way is the way that he should approach the fight? And when approach the fight, do you agree also with Greg's analysis that, you know, Zhang essentially follow the Joe Joyce model, which is, you know, essentially walk Parker down and know at some point you're going to touch him, and at that point it could be fight over.
I agree. I agree with him in terms of Zhang's game plan. I do. I think Zhang to walk him down, kind of impose the size, the power advantage on Parker. You know, as Greg mentioned, if you can, he's not a huge puncher. Like he can punch, but he's not kind of a well-known, renowned concussive puncher for heavyweight. But yeah, I do think walk him down, impose that size. Know that you can box him as well. You have the superior kind of boxing ability than Parker, and get him. You know, look to kind of get him out there early if you can walk him down. But in terms of Parker, I'm going to disagree slightly and say that I think that Parker's main aim here has to be to get to the second half of the fight. Just, you know, to wear Zhang down the stretch. You know, as Greg mentioned, the straight shots to the body, to the solar plexus are going to be key. But I think Parker, if I was in his corner, I'd say kind of settle with the fact that you're going to get outboxed early by this fella. But the game plan is always to kind of get to him down the stretch, as I say, bank rounds later on than as opposed to the first half. So yeah, slight disagreement there, and I'd say that Parker just has to get to the second half of the fight, even if he's losing. You know, he's getting outboxed or what, but yeah, just test that engine of Zhang. But yeah, good points though made by Greg. I can definitely see where he's coming from.
You know what, lads, we haven't discussed this off air for you watching, so we don't actually know what the predictions are going to be here. So we are at prediction time, and I'm going to come to you, Niall, and I'm also going to put a prediction in here as well. But I'm going to come to you, Niall, first, then Greg, then I might, depending on if you guys agree or disagree, I'll have the casting vote or, you know, the casting and correction, depending on how the fight plays out. But Niall, we'll come to you first, 30 seconds or so, just on who you think is going to win and how. And if you're going to go for a knockout, let's give a range of maybe 3 rounds, please, that you think that's going to take place in.
I'm not even saying this to be kind of controversial or edgy or anything, but I'm gonna call a draw here. I really am. I'm gonna call a draw. I just cannot split these two at all. I can't. They each bring something to the table that the other doesn't, and they're so evenly matched, you know. So yeah, I can't call it. I'm so looking forward to this fight, and it's so evenly matched. Like if there was to be a winner, no outcome would surprise me. You know, that's it. That's how tight it is. No outcome would surprise me. If it was points for either man, I think it's going to be razor tight. But I just cannot officially settle on a result for either of them. So yeah, I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to call it now.
You know, no, that might be the first in history. There's an alpha and eloquent pick there that you've made that the case for the draw. I can see where you're coming from, frankly. I can't actually critique it. Greg, are you going to lean either way, or you also think seeming that a draw could be a likely result?
I'm going to go a draw. No, I'm only joking. Can I tell you something though? I'm not a million miles away from Niall at all. I'm finding this fight really hard
Yeah.
because did Joseph Parker get a really good result against a really bad Deontay Wilder? Although he's got that one punch that changes the fight. Zhang was Joe Joyce made for him because he was slow and sitting right in front of him, whereas he struggled with guys like Jerry Forrest who move, Joseph Parker moves. It's really, really hard. I'm with Niall. I think that no outcome would surprise me, but I'm just going to call a little bit of an Indian summer in Joseph Parker's career. I think he might just outpoint Zhang in a hard fight, but I think it's razor close.
You know what? I actually I don't actually know. I don't think it's I don't think it'd be a draw. Put it that way. I don't think it'd be a draw. I think there will be a result, but I don't know what that result could be. But I can kind of go either way. I'll go with the Zhang KO. But I actually going to agree with you here, Greg. I actually think that Parker may just have enough to sort of stay away from Zhang, tire him out, and grind the decision. But equally, I wouldn't be surprised if Shang poleaxed him with a straight left somewhere around the ninth round either. I wouldn't be surprised. But lads, that is not what we've got time for. We've got time for one more question, and this is really, I suppose, just a kind of quick look at the kind of heavyweight scene. Obviously, you've got Usyk fighting Fury in May. Obviously, on the same card here, we've got Joshua versus Ngannou as well. And the question I want to really ask you, just to leave on this, really, is for the victor here. So if you've got Zhang, 40 years old, not obviously young in any stretch, heavyweight or otherwise. Parker, 32 years old. Do you think that either of these guys at this stage of their career, post this stage of their career, will go on to fight for and possibly win a world title? Just a quick sort of yes or no, 10 seconds or less. Niall, come to you first.
I'm going to say quickly, I'm going to say no. I think they're too old, and I think that Fury or the belts are too tied up. They're too old, so by the time they get around to it, I couldn't say it, but I think Fury or Usyk will beat both of them. So no from
Greg,
me.
do you reckon either of these two could win a world title? Do you think they'll fight for a world title as well? It's two slightly different questions.
Depending on the opponent, I think Zhang could win another world title. Do I think it will happen? Same answer as now, no, because I think the belts are tied up for too long.
Guys, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to break that fight down with you. And for those watching, let us know in the comments whether you agree or disagree with anything we've discussed tonight. Whether you think that Parker could stop Zhang, whether you think it's lunacy to even suggest it, whether Zhang could outpoint Parker, seemingly whether you think we've had some sort of break from reality and saying that could also likely happen. Let us know your predictions, how you see it playing out. And similarly, check out the channel for other content that we've got. Obviously, as I've already mentioned there, Joshua and Ngannou, we've got other big fight breakdowns. We'll have interviews, reviews, and previews of this massive event that's taking place, obviously, in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Greg, Niall, thank you very much for taking part here and for sharing your eloquence and your insight. And guys, as always, thank you very much for watching.